I'm Brittany, this is Lanjan, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch gay things. Sometimes we read them, and sometimes we finish them, sort of. I was looking through the last little moments of the MDZS Volume 5 that we are currently reading, and we actually should finish the main story today. Actually, we should finish the main story and the first extra little side story today. That's kind of what's on the docket. So we have some endings. We have some endings to get to that I'm excited. I'm a little dreading it because like it's always sad when the Untamed MDZS, whatever you call it, it's always a little sad when it ends. Because it's just so, but I still have the Donghua to look forward to, right? I still have a whole animated series that I get to watch, as a reaction, obviously. But I still have all of that, and yet this is the second medium that I've experienced this story in, and it continues to be like, just really, it's really special to me. So we have a little bit of a, wistful's not the right word. It's a little sad, it's a little beautiful, but I'm also really excited to get to the Donghua. So, like, it's a little happy, too. I don't know when I'm gonna get to the Donghua. I don't know where that's gonna fit on the schedule. That's definitely going to be a thing that happens, even if it only happens over on Patreon and eventually has to be one of those things that go public. Anyway, we are starting on page 164, right dead ass in the middle where the scene break is. They banged. They fucked. They finally climbed on top of each other and got it over with already. I may have to study this sex scene actually. It was so brilliantly executed and just one of the most in character, like ruthlessly in character. Like, she did not compromise character for, I don't know, we tend to, like, writers tend to get a little bit, like, maybe they get a little bit sappy, or maybe they get a little bit flowery, or maybe they just get a little bit off in a direction that may not be immediately what comes to mind when you think of the character, but still ultimately works because they're being put in this new context that you haven't seen. No, that scene was just like every other scene between them. They just so happened to be fucking while they were, yeah. So kudos to her. That was genius. And now now that they've slid home, we get to slide on home with the end of the main story. So let us go. Even though this is pre-recorded for you because, I mean, smut, this is being treated like it's a live stream. So unless something really goes wrong, you won't see any edits. It's just to keep with that same chaotic vibe so that it feels more like a live stream, right? Also, you heard me cough. That's an asthma thing. I try to mitigate it. I try to, make it less of an issue. But at the end of the day, bear with me. I believe that's it. So, 3 months later, a group of villagers slowly began to surround the dense woods at the top of a mountain in Guangling. They had torches raised in their hands and wielded farming tools like instruments of defense. There was an abandoned gravesite on the mountain, one that hadn't been too peaceful in recent months. The villagers at the foot of the mountain had been constantly disturbed by the ghosts wandering out of those very graves. At last, unable to endure it any longer, they sought the help of passing cultivators and climbed the mountain to banish the hauntings once and for all. Night was falling. Insects droned ceaselessly in the tall wild grass, their cries loud and clear. It was as though there were unknown creatures creeping within the brush, waiting to strike at any given moment. But whenever the group plucked up enough courage to tensely approach with their torches and push aside the grass, it always proved to be nothing but a false alarm. Swords at the ready, the cultivators cautiously led the villagers across the meadow and into the forest proper. The abandoned gravesite was in the woods. The tombs were crafted of stone and wood, all currently either slanting or collapsed from the toll neglect had taken. The air was thick with eerie, sinister energy. The cultivators traded looks with each other, then produced talismans to get down to the business of clearing out evil. Seeing them appear at ease, the villagers sighed a breath of relief. It seemed the situation was not too fraught. Before they could fully exhale that breath, however, there suddenly came a loud crash. A mutilated corpse had fallen onto a burial mound ahead of them. The villager closest to the mound let out a horrified scream and hurled his torch forward before running away, stumbling and crawling. Soon after, a second bloody corpse came crashing down, then a third, a fourth. It was as if the sky was raining corpses. You know, I was wondering why I hadn't recognized this scene yet, and I imagine it is hard to put on film in China. No. Hello. It just bumped myself right off of. Screams instantly rang out all around. The cultivators had never witnessed something like this before. In their shock, their courage deserted them. "Don't run away, don't panic," the leader of the cultivators barked. "It's nothing but a puny evil." His sentence came to an abrupt stop before he could finish, like he'd been seized by the throat. He had spotted a tree. There was a man sitting at the top of said tree. The black hem of his robe hung free, and his long, slender leg, clad in a black boot, swayed gently back and forth with the utmost leisure. He seemed to be completely at ease. A dark flute was tucked into the man's waistband. A tassel as red as fresh blood dangled from one end, swaying with the movement of his leg. The cultivators' expressions changed instantly. The villagers had been in a frenzy of panic and confusion until the head cultivator's cry brought them some peace of mind. But now they could only watch as every last cultivator blanched and bolted in an instant, charging like a whirlwind out of the forest and down the mountain, leaving them to their fate. The villagers, deducing that there had to be some sort of great and formidable evil on the mountain that even the cultivators could do nothing about, were also scared witless. Everyone scattered like fleeing birds and beasts. One of the villagers was slow in his escape. As he lagged behind, he tripped and fell. Left alone with nothing but a mouthful of dirt, he was sure he would be dead in moments. Instead, his eyes lit up as he saw a man dressed in white standing before him. A long sword hung at this man's waist. He seemed awash in a hazy white glow. Surrounded by the dark and haunting forest, he looked like a transcendental being, quite unlike any inhabitant of the secular world. The villager immediately begged for his help. Gongji, help! There are ghosts! Hurry, get rid of the Another dead body fell in front of him before he could finish. Its face, which was bleeding from every orifice, was staring right at him. Just as the villager was about to faint from fright, the man said to him, "Go." Although it was merely a single word, the villager felt inexplicably reassured, like he'd been granted reprieve from death. A sudden burst of energy filled him, and he crawled to his feet and ran away without looking back. The white-clad men glanced at the bloody corpses crawling all over the forest, apparently at a loss for words. He gazed upward, and the black-clad vagabond sitting in the tree hopped down lightly. In the blink of an eye, the black-clad man flashed in front of him and pinned him against a tree. Isn't this the incorruptible Hangwanjun? Lan Wangji? He breathed out. "What are you doing on my turf?" The ground was littered with bloody corpses, all looking either confused or savage as they struggled to crawl around. The The black-clad man extended an arm and propped it against the tree, trapping Lan Wangji between him and the trunk. Lan Wangji remained expressionless. The black-clad man let out a sigh. Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, then I'll... Hey! But with a single hand, Lan Wangji caught and locked both his wrists. The tables had turned. Oh heavens! The now restrained black-clad man exclaimed in feigned surprise. You know, I suspected, and I was like, no. And then now it's like, yeah, I think they're catching up innocent bystanders in their sexual roleplay now. Hang Wenjun, you're too amazing, incredible, shocking, unbelievable. You were actually able to subdue me with but one hand. I couldn't fight back at all. What a terrifying man. Lan Wangji had no comment. Neither do fucking I. His hand unconsciously gripped harder, and the black-clad man's astonishment turned into horror. Ouch! Let me go, Hang Won-jun. I won't do it again. Don't grab me like that. You mustn't tie me up either, and absolutely do not pin me to the ground. I am so fucking done. I am so far beyond... As his words and actions grew increasingly exaggerated, Lan Wangji's eyebrows twitched. He finally spoke to interrupt him. Enough playing around. Wei Wuxian had been enjoying himself, begging for mercy. The most sub-sentence to ever exist. Why? He exclaimed, astonished. I'm not done begging, though. Lan Wangji was momentarily speechless before he chided, You have been begging for mercy every day. Enough. Well, every day is every day, am I right? As we so clearly learned. Wei Wuxian leaned into him. Isn't that what you wanted? He whispered. Every day means every day. His face was extremely close, almost as if he was going to kiss Lan Wangji. But he refused to press their lips together so easily. He teased, suggesting he might close the gap, but never breaching that paper-thin distance. Ooh. That's a really nice mental image. He was like an amorous but mischievous... Woo, that was not a word. He was like an amorous but mischievous butterfly, fluttering as soft as a wispy breath over a dignified petal, flirting with perching, flirting with the promise of a kiss. At being teased like that, Lan Wangji's light eyes flashed. He moved like he had finally lost control of himself. Oh no, that's terrible. No, don't. Stop. The petal reaching out to touch the butterfly's wings, unable to resist the temptation. But Wei Wuxian raised his head at once, evading his lips. Call me Gaga, Wei Wuxian said, his eyebrows arcing high. Oh my god. There, you have corpses around, you know. There's just an ellipsis for Wangji's response. Call me Gaga, he prompted again. Call me Gaga and I'll let you kiss me. Lan Wangji's lips moved slightly. Never in his life had he ever called another by an address that had such soft, tender connotations. He had only ever addressed even Lan Xichen with a methodical Shangjiang. Come on, let me hear it, Wei Wuxian pressed, tempting him. I've called you that so many times already. Once you say it and kiss me, you can do other things too. The word was already on the tip of Lan Wangji's tongue, but the moment he heard that, he was defeated by Wei Wuxian's teasing, and the word never left his mouth in the end. After trying to restrain himself, he hissed through his teeth, "Shameless." "Aren't you tired holding me with a single hand like this?" Wei Wuxian said. "How inconvenient to only have one hand left to do business." Composing himself, Lan Wangji asked politely, "Then please enlighten me on what to do." "Let me give you some pointers," Wei Wuxian said. "Take off your forehead ribbon and tie my hands. Wouldn't it be much easier like that?" Lan Wangji quietly watched him giggle to himself, then slowly removed his forehead ribbon and showed it to Wei Wuxian. Next, he tied both of Wei Wuxian's hands with lightning speed. He pressed them firmly in place over Wei Wuxian's head before burying his face in the crook of his neck. Just then, a frightened shriek suddenly came from the brush. "Thank you." I was like, wasn't there some stuff we were in the middle of? The two immediately broke apart. Lan Wangji placed his hand on Bichen's hilt, but didn't recklessly unsheath the sword, as the cry had been quite crisp and delicate, obviously that of a child. It would be terrible if he hurt a passerby by accident. The tall thicket rustled, and the signs of movement shifted farther and farther away. It appeared whoever had screamed was making an escape. Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji had only pursued the rustling trail for a few steps when they heard a woman's joyful voice from the bottom of the hill. "Mian Mian, are you all right? How could you run off in a place like this? You scared Mom half to death." "Wait!" Wei Wuxian was taken aback. "Mian Mian?" Just as he was reflecting on the familiarity of that name, he was sure he'd heard it somewhere before. A man's scolding voice joined in. "We told you not to run off during night hunts, but you still charged ahead on your own. What would your mom and I do if you got eaten by a ghost? Mian Mian, what's wrong? Why do you look like that?" His next sentence must have been directed at the woman. "Qinyang, quick, take a look. Is something wrong with Mian Mian? Why does she look like that? Did she see something she shouldn't have up there?" Oh no. This is the problem with PDA, guys. This is the problem with taking your kink out into public, semi-public, or potentially public areas. You're gonna scar a child. Well, she certainly had seen what she shouldn't have. Lan Wangji shot a look at Wei Wuxian. Wei Wuxian returned an innocent look and mouthed, "How sinful of us. Oh my fucking god." Oh no. Oh no. I already loved him. Oh no. But getting to experience him as like full subby fucking brat? I'm not okay. He clearly felt not a single shred of guilt or contrition for having corrupted a child. Lan Wangji, I mean, what did she really see? It's one of those things she's not really going to understand for a while. She'll just be like, a guy pinned another guy up against a tree. It was weird. In a way that she senses is something that she hasn't seen before. But again, won't fully understand until later. Lan Wangji shook his head. The two left the gravesite together and made their way down the hill. The family of three were both shocked and alarmed as they watched the two of them emerge from the brush. The man and woman were a married couple, both crouched on the ground. Between them stood a little girl. Her hair was coiffed in double buns, and she appeared to be about 10 years of age. Oh, okay, so she's 10. You know, maybe she's sheltered? Maybe she still doesn't understand. I was a bit advanced by then. Like, I had at least seen James Bond movies. You know what I mean? The woman was charmingly beautiful, and a sword hung from her waist. At the sight of Wei Wuxian, she immediately drew her weapon and pointed the blade at him. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Whoever we may be, we're human," Wei Wuxian answered. The woman was about to say something else when she noticed Lan Wangji standing behind Wei Wuxian. She was instantly taken aback. "Han Wangjun?" Surprisingly, Lan Wangji wasn't wearing his forehead ribbon. which meant she couldn't be certain it was him for a moment. She might have doubted it even longer had it not been for his unforgettable looks. I mean, when her gaze moved back to Wei Wuxian, her face went blank for a moment. Then, you're... No, I love this. I love this. I love how... She is the second character, at least. She is the second character to be like, Han Wangjun, standing next to someone. Ride or die with someone? Out and about with someone. Wei Wuxian must be back from the dead. Like, he must be in a body that I don't recognize. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. Also, I cannot believe this is the real context for how we run into Mian Mian? Excuse me? Like, excuse me? Wait. Didn't they... Wait. In the show, they were in that haystack before they talked to Mian Mian at all, right? That like happened first. They show up there, she's not home. They poke around. They hide when they get home. And then there's the haystack bit. And then they have to identify themselves, right? So the haystack bit was literally their adaptation around the explicitly gay and also dead corpses everywhere stuff. Interesting. Because I remember the haystack scene wasn't exactly like subtle from what I remember. Hello. I just got a tangent, my bad. News of the Yiling Patriarch's return had already spread. Wei Wuxian wasn't surprised to be recognized. Of course the person at Lan Wangji's side must be him. He did notice she looked vaguely excited and that she also seemed somewhat familiar. Could this lady know me, he wondered to himself. Is there some grudge between us? Did I ever provoke her in the past? No, that can't be. I don't know any girl named Qin Yang. Ah, Mian Mian! It clicked in Wei Wuxian's mind. You're Mian Mian? The man glared. For what reason are you addressing my daughter? As it turned out, the little girl who had been running around and accidentally got an eyeful was Mian Mian's daughter, whose name was also Mian Mian. Wei Wuxian found this quite fun. One big Mian Mian, one little Mian Mian. Lan Wangji bowed his head in greeting toward the woman. Miss Lo. The woman tucked some strands of hair behind her ear, and returned the courtesy. Han Wangjun. Then she turned her gaze to Wei Wuxian. Wei Gongji. Wei Wuxian smiled at the woman. Miss Lo, I finally figured out your real name. Lo Qinyang gave a somewhat shy smile, seeming embarrassed to recall the past. She pulled the man over and introduced him. This is my husband. Realizing the two weren't criminals, the man relaxed. After exchanging some pleasantries, Wei Wuxian casually asked him, and to which clan or sect does the gentleman belong? None, the man answered very directly. Lo Qinyang gazed at her husband with a smile. My husband isn't a cultivator. He used to be a merchant, but he's willing to come on night hunts with me. An ordinary person, and a man at that, who was willing to give up his stable life to wander the world with his wife, unafraid of travel and of danger. A heart like that was an extremely rare and valuable thing, and Wei Wuxian couldn't help but feel respect for the man. Get you a man, Mian Mian! Yes, it is what she fucking deserves. She deserves not an inch less. Damn it. Lo Qinyang nodded. Yes, I heard there is evil. Oh, sorry, I skipped a line of dialogue. Have you also come here tonight, Hunt? Wei Wuxian asked. Lo Qinyang nodded. Yes, I heard there is evil haunting the abandoned gravesite on the peak of this mountain, disturbing the locals' lives and causing them great misery. So I wanted to come see if there was anything I could do. The two of you have already cleaned up the place, I'm assuming? Well, they were about to get it dirty, but, in a sense, you could say they were on the case. There was no need for others to interfere if Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji had taken care of the situation. However, Wei Wuxian said, those villagers lied to you. Lo Qinyang I'm still getting used to her name. Lo Qinyang, there we go, blinked. What do you mean? They told outsiders that evil forces were causing the random disturbances, but it was actually thanks to them robbing the graves and making a mess of the descendants' bones. That's not descendants. That's a typo. Okay. It's supposed to be descendants. Wei Wuxian said, that's why the masters of the abandoned gravesite fought back. Really? Lo Qinyang's husband asked doubtfully. But even if it was in retaliation for a crime, there was no need for them to take lives. Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji exchanged a look before Wei Wuxian explained further. That was also a lie. Not a single life has been lost, as we found during our investigation. A few of the grave-robbing villagers lost some sleep as they cowered in their beds in fear of the spirits, and there was only one actual injury, a villager who broke his leg while he was fleeing in panic. There were no casualties. Any lost lives were fabricated to sensationalize the problem. Is that true? How shameless, Lo Qinyang's husband exclaimed. I love how he hasn't gotten a name yet either. He's just Lo Qinyang's husband. Lo Qinyang sighed. Oh, those people. She shook her head like she had just remembered something from the past. They're the same everywhere. I gave them a scare earlier, Wei Wuxian said. After tonight, they probably won't dare rob graves again, and the spirits won't go looking for trouble without provocation. Problem solved. And then I tried to get Dick down, and your daughter accidentally saw me. Sorry. Sorry about that. But they had asked other cultivators to come and help them suppress, Lo Qinyang started. Wei Wuxian flashed a smile. I showed my face. Lo Qinyang understood. The Yiling patriarch had shown his face, which meant the cultivators who'd seen him would surely tell everyone they could. They would assume he had claimed this area as his territory, and who would be audacious enough to provoke his ire? Now he's using his bad reputation smart. I see, Lo Qinyang laughed. And here I thought Mian Mian had had a run-in with some sort of evil creature. She looked so scared. Please forgive us if she was rude in any way. No. We were probably the uncivil ones, Wei Wuxian thought, though he appeared perfectly serious on the outside. Please don't worry about it, and please forgive us as well for scaring Xiao Mian. Lo Qinyang's husband picked up his daughter. Mian sat on her father's arm and scowled at Wei Wuxian with her cheeks puffed out, indignant but too embarrassed to say anything. She wore a little light red skirt, and her dark purple eyes gleamed in her fair, adorable face like a pair of glistening grapes. Wei Wuxian really wanted to pinch her cheek. Alas, her father was watching him with great vigilance, so he tucked one hand behind his back and settled for squeezing one of her little hanging braids. Mian looked so much like you when you were little, Miss Lo, he said with a merry grin. Lan Wangji cast him a glance, but said nothing. Amused, Lo Qinyang pursed her lips in a smile. Wei Gongji, how can you say that with a clear conscience? Do you really remember what I looked like when I was young? That pursed-lipped smile seemed to overlap in his memory with the expression worn by the young lady of years gone by, dressed in a red gauze robe. Wei Wuxian didn't feel embarrassed in the least. Of course I remember. You haven't changed that much. Oh yeah, how old is she? I'll give her some evil-repelling money. Oh, there's a footnote for that. When meeting someone of importance for the first time, it is customary to give a gift. When meeting children, the gift is usually something simple, like petty cash. The word Wei Wuxian used is the archaic term, also known as Hongbao, meaning red pocket/packets. These are gifts that signify good fortune, which are given during Lunar New Year to subdue and repel the evil Sui, the year beast. Oh. Thank you, Hang Wanjun, Mian Mian said. Mian Mian, I'm the one who gave you the money. Why didn't you thank me? Wei Wuxian teased. Mian Mian shot him an angry glare and refused to talk to him no matter how he teased. Instead, she tugged on a red string around her neck, pulling out an exquisite little perfume sachet. With careful concentration, she dropped the coins inside like they were treasure. They soon descended the mountain. With some regret, Wei Wuxian had no choice but to bid them farewell, as his and Lan Wangji's journey would take them down a different road. As they disappeared into the distance, Lo Qinyang admonished her daughter. Mian Mian, you were so rude. He saved Mom's life in the past. Her husband was astonished. Really? Mian Mian, you hear that? See how rude you were. Mian Mian pouted. I don't like him. Gosh, child, Lo Qinyang sighed. If you didn't like him, you would have thrown that evil repelling money away. Mian Mian buried her little blushing face in her father's chest and humphed. He was doing a bad thing. Caught between tears and laughter, Lo Qinyang was about to speak when her husband said with amazement, Qinyang, I've heard you mention Hang Wanjun before. I remember him being a major figure in a prominent clan. Why did he show up in a tiny village like this to hunt such petty prey? Hang Wanjun is different from other distinguished cultivators, Lo Qinyang patiently explained to her husband. He always appears where there is chaos. One fucking way to put it. If anyone is being tormented by evil forces, he will come to their aid, no matter the level of the night hunt's prey or the accolades he receives. Her husband nodded. A cultivator truly worthy of renown, he continued nervously. Then what about Wei Gongji? You said he saved your life, but how come I've never heard you mention him? When in the past was your life in danger? Lo Qinyang took Mian Mian into her arms. She smiled, an odd light shimmering in her eyes. Well. And that's how the scene ends. We get a scene break. We are on page 176. Oh my god. The context around that fucking reuniting. Back on the other road, Wei Wuxian said to Lan Wangji, to think a young lady from way back then has a daughter now, who's also a young lady. Lan Wangji replied. But that's not fair, Wei Wuxian said. She could have clearly seen that it was you doing a bad thing to me. How come she can't stand the sight of me? Lan Wangji didn't respond. Wei Wuxian spun around to face Lan Wangji and started walking backward. Oh, I get it, he said as he walked. Deep down, she actually likes me, just like a certain someone back then. Lan Wangji brushed non-existent dust from his sleeves and said calmly, Please return my forehead ribbon, Wei Yuan, whoa, Wei Wandao, no, there is an A, Wei Wandao. That has a footnote. In allusion to the same historical poem from which Wei Wuxian originally derived Lo Qinyang's Mian Mian nickname. Mian Mian Shi Yuan Dao. I don't know why. I don't know why my mouth can't do that. I think there's been trickier Chinese pronunciations that my mouth has done, but you know. For how many years have you guzzled the vinegar of jealousy? Ooh, the vinegar of jealousy. That's good. You hid it so well, I didn't even smell the sourness. Lan Wangji obediently raised his head, as he'd always done, but suddenly felt an unruly hand slip into his breast pocket. He looked down, but Wei Wuxian had already pilfered what had been tucked inside. Wei Wuxian feigned surprise. What's this? It was Lan Wangji's money pouch. Wei Wuxian spun the exquisite little sachet by its tassels while pointing at him accusingly. Hang Wanjun, Oh, hang one June. Taking without asking is called stealing. And what did they call you back then? The descendant of a prestigious sect, the role model of the clan's juniors. Role model indeed. You were chugging vinegar in secret. You even stole the perfume sachet a young lady gave me to use as your own money pouch. No wonder I couldn't find it anywhere after I woke up. If this sachet wasn't exactly the same as the one Xiao Mian Mian had, I wouldn't have even remembered. Look at you. Tell me, how'd you swipe it off me when I was unconscious? How long did you feel me up? A ripple of emotion flashed over Lan Wangji's face. He reached out to snatch the pouch back, but Wei Wuxian swung it away and dodged his hand. He backed up a couple of steps. Trying to snatch it back since you can't win the argument? What are you so shy for? Why be embarrassed over this? Now I finally know why I could be this shameless. We're a match made in heaven. All the shame I should have is stored with you, and you're keeping it for me. There are essays. We don't have time to unpack all that. Light pink colored Lan Wangji's earlobes, but his expression was still pulled tight. His hands moved quickly, but Wei Wuxian's feet were faster. Lan Wangji could see the pouch, but not catch it. You're the one who gave the money pouch to me in the past, so why are you trying to take it back now? Look at yourself, stealing things, engaging in fornication, and going back on your word to boot. You're bad to the bone. I'm sure that's exactly what he said in Chinese. Lan Wangji tackled him, finally capturing him in his arms. We have done our 3 bows. We are married. It is not fornication, he countered. What a way to drop in the fact that they completed their fucking ceremony. God, they've been doing all this as a married couple. Jesus. They're married when they meet Mian Mian. This is cruel. MX, that's mean. Even as a married couple, you can't keep coming at me with such force. Always making me beg, not even stopping when I do beg. Look how you've changed. The ancestors of the Lan clan of Gusu are going to be vexed to death. Unable to endure this any longer, Lan Wangji brutally sealed his lips. The day after encountering Lo Qinyang and her family, the two of them reached a small town in Guangling. The silence spell still pops up even between married people. Wei Wuxian raised a hand to his brow and saw a tavern banner fluttering in the distance. Let's take a break up ahead, he said. Lan Wangji nodded, and the two walked there, side by side. Since that night at the Guanyin Temple in Yunmeng, Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji had traveled together, wandering all over with Little Apple in tow. They still appeared wherever there was chaos. Wherever there was talk of hauntings and evil disrupting people's lives, they would go to lend a helping hand. They'd also sightsee while they were at it and learn about the local culture. They had spent 3 months this way, shutting out all news of the cultivation world and living a carefree life. After entering the tavern, they took a seat in an inconspicuous corner, and the waiter came over to greet them. He saw the sword at Lan Wangji's waist, then the flute at Wei Wuxian's. Because of their appearance and bearing, he couldn't help but connect them to the pair who had been the subject of all the most heated talk recently. But after staring at them intently for a while, he noticed that the customer dressed in white was not wearing the Lan clan's forehead ribbon. Ultimately, he was left unsure of their identities. Wei Wuxian asked for liquor while Lan Wangji ordered a few dishes. With one hand propping up his cheek and the other toying with the snow-white forehead ribbon under the table, Wei Wuxian listened to his deep voice as he read off the dishes. A wide grin was plastered on his face. Once the waiter was God, I want art of that. Once the waiter was gone, he commented, So many spicy dishes. Can you eat them? Lan Wangji picked up the teacup on the table and took a sip. Sit properly, he said evenly. There's no tea in there, Wei Wuxian pointed out. Lan Wangji filled the cup, then raised it to his lips again. After a while, he repeated, Sit properly. Am I not? It's not like I'm propping my feet up on the table like I used to, Wei Wuxian said. Lan Wangji could no longer bear it. Even so, do not put them elsewhere. Don't. Don't give this to me. Don't give this to me. Don't give this to me. Wei Wuxian was confused. Where did I put them? Leonard Gongji has so many demands. Why don't you teach me how to sit properly? I mean, okay. Maybe I go on about the perfect epitome of a service top that Lan Wangji was, and will always be. But can we talk about the absolutely perfect, unbelievably, like, ideal subby bottom that Wei Wuxian is? I mean, legendary. Perfect. Never goes, no. No. Lan Wangji put down the teacup and cast him a look. He was about to rise in a whirl of sleeves in order to teach him a very proper lesson indeed, but just then, a table at the center of the main hall burst into a chorus of roaring laughter. I just knew Jing Guangyao was going to fall sooner or later, considering his way of doing things, someone at the table gloated. I've waited for this day for so long, and now it's all been exposed. That's what you call karma. Wei Wuxian found the man's jeering almost endearing. If you just changed the name of the one being insulted, it was incredibly familiar. But he couldn't... Ooh! That's a clever nod to the foil! He couldn't help but listen closely. One of the cultivators raised his chopsticks. It's true what they've all said through history. People like him, the brighter they look on the surface, the nastier they are behind the scenes. That's right, not a single one of them is genuinely good. Who among the venerable and the gentlemen aren't filth wearing a saintly skin for the world to see? Oh, shit. Another cultivator was chewing large mouthfuls of meat and gulping down liquor. He spat it all everywhere as he spoke. Speaking of which, that Cece woman was super popular in the brothels back in the day. She looks so old now I didn't even recognize her. Fucking revolting. The way Jing Guangsheng died was pretty tragic, too. Amazing that Jing Guangyao came up with a method like that to kill his dad. How perfectly fitting. Impeccable. See, now I'm curious. Why didn't Jing Guangyao kill that old prostitute? Witnesses should be eliminated. Was he that stupid? How would you know if he was being stupid? He was Jing Guangsheng's spawn. Maybe he was promiscuous too. Maybe he had unique tastes. Maybe he had a special relationship with Cece. I agree, but don't the rumors say that Jing Guangyao was so frightened by his sinful fornication with his blood sister that he wound up with a certain unspeakable affliction? Even if he had the intent, he didn't have the power, you know what I'm saying? This baseless gossip was extremely familiar. Wei Wuxian recalled there being countless people back in the day who talked about how he'd kidnapped 1,000 virgins and locked them away in his demonic lair, the burial mounds, committing licentious deeds day and night to cultivate some great and evil magic. It had been oddly hilarious to hear. All right, he thought. At least what they said about me back then was a little better than what they're saying about Jing Guangyao now. The comments were growing increasingly revolting to hear, and Lan Wangji's brow furrowed. Thankfully, the more normal folks at the table also couldn't take it anymore. Keep it down, one of the cultivators said in a hushed voice. It's not like any of that is pleasant to hear. But the cultivators who were laughing boisterously didn't care. What's there to be afraid of? No one here knows us. Yeah, besides, so what if anyone overhears? What are they going to do about it? You think the Jing clan of Lanling is what it used to be? Can they shut people up? If they've got what it takes, let them try to dominate everyone like they did in the past. If they don't like it, they can shove it. Someone finally derailed the subject. All right, why keep on this topic? Eat. No matter how many wives Jing Guangyao made while alive, all he can do now is fight with Niming Zhu in that coffin. Oh. I gotta say, it sucks. When enemies meet, their hate blazes twice as hot. Nimingzhu has probably shattered his bones to pieces by now. You got that right. I went to the coffin sealing ceremony, and the resentment surrounding the casket was so heavy that not a single blade of grass grew within a 500-meter radius. I wonder if that coffin can really keep them sealed for a whole century. Whether it can has nothing to do with you. It's those clans' problem. Either way, the Jin clan of Lanling is over. The winds have changed completely, I say. Zaewujun looked so upset at the coffin sealing ceremony. How could he not? Those are his two sworn brothers inside the coffin. The juniors back at his home are running around everywhere with a fierce corpse. They even actually feed that fierce corpse to help them out during night hunts. Oh, hey. No wonder he's been shutting himself away in seclusion all day. If Lan Wangji doesn't go home soon, Lan Qiren will probably start cursing in the streets for all to hear. Lan Wangji had no comment. Wei Wuxian snorted a laugh. The comments continued. Speaking of which, the ceremony was managed really well, eh? I've got new respect for Ni Huasong, don't we fucking all? When he asked to be the one to take on the task, I thought he was going to mess up for sure, being the head shaker and all. Me too. Who would have thought he could just direct it? Who would have thought he could just direct... Why am I trying to add just in there where it doesn't... It comes later in the sentence. Who would have thought he could direct it just as well as Lan Qiren? Listening to their surprise, Wei Wuxian thought, that's nothing. In the next few decades, the family head of the Ni clan of Qing'e may reveal his genius and have many more surprises in store for the world. The dishes were served, as was the liquor. Wei Wuxian poured himself a cup and drank it slowly. Suddenly, a young man's voice said, "So is the yin tiger tally inside the coffin or not?" The tavern fell quiet. Shortly after, someone answered, "Who knows, maybe. If Jin Guangyao didn't have the yin tiger tally with him, where else would he have put it? But it's not a sure thing. Didn't they say the yin tiger tally is just a piece of scrap metal now? That it's useless at this point?" The young man who spoke sat alone at a table, holding a sword in his arms. Is the coffin really sturdy enough? What if someone wants to see if the yin tiger tally is inside? What'll happen? Who would dare? Someone shouted immediately. The Ni clan of Qing'e, the Lan clan of Gusu, and the Jang clan of Yangmeng have all sent people to guard the cemetery grounds. Who would be so audacious? The people voiced their agreement. The young man said no more, but picked up the bowl of tea on the table to take a sip instead, seeming to have given up on the argument. However, the look in his eyes did not change. Wei Wuxian had seen that look in many people's eyes, and he also knew it wouldn't be the last time he'd see it. After they left the tavern, they continued on their way. Wei Wuxian still rode on Little Apple's back, and Lan Wangji held the reins. Swaying leisurely back and forth on the little spotted donkey, Wei Wuxian took out his flute and raised it to his lips. The instrument's crisp sound shot into the sky like a bird taking flight. Lan Wangji stopped and listened quietly. It was the song he had once sung for Wei Wuxian, back when they were trapped inside the cave of the Xuanwu Slaughter. It was also the one Wei Wuxian had been curiously compelled to play on Mount Defen, the song that had allowed Lan Wangji to confirm his identity. At the end of the song, Wei Wuxian gave Lan Wangji a wink. How was it? Not bad, right? Lan Wangji slowly inclined his head. For once. Wei Wuxian, knowing that for once was directed at his memory, couldn't help but smile. Stop being so peeved about that. I was wrong, okay? Besides, it's my mom's fault that I have a bad memory. How so? Lan Wangji asked. Wei Wuxian rested his arms on Little Apple's head and spun Chenqing in one hand. My mom once said, you have to remember the good things people have done for you, instead of remembering the bad. A person's heart shouldn't be burdened with so many memories. That's how you live freely. Well shit, I feel like that explains some things. This advice was one of the few memories he had of his parents. Wei Wuxian's mind wandered for a moment, but he quickly pulled himself back down to earth. Seeing Lan Wangji staring at him, he continued, "My mom also said..." When he was slow to finish his thought, Lan Wangji prompted him. "Said what?" Wei Wuxian beckoned him close with a waggle of his finger, wearing a solemn expression. Lan Wangji moved closer. Wei Wuxian leaned down and whispered into his ear, "Said you're already mine." Lan Wangji quirked his eyebrows, but just as he was about to open his mouth to speak, Wei Wuxian cut in. "Shameless, flippant, frivolous, arrogant, crazy, spewing nonsense again, right? There, I said it all for you. It's always the same words over and over. You really haven't changed a bit. I'm yours too, so we're even now, all right?" Lan Wangji would never win against Wei Wuxian when it came to running his mouth. "Whatever you say," he replied calmly. Wei Wuxian tugged at the donkey's reins. "Seriously, though, I've come up with over 80 names now for that song. Is there not a single one you like?" "No," Lan Wangji said with conviction. "Why? I thought Lan Zhen and Wei Ying's Ballad of Love was pretty good." Lan Wangji didn't respond. Wei Wuxian began to spew nonsense once more. "Hangwan Yiling Everyday Song is good too. It's a name that obviously has a story behind it." "There already is," Lan Wangji finally said, as if not wanting to hear any more names. "There's already what?" Wei Wuxian asked. "A name," Lan Wangji said. Wei Wuxian was astonished. "You already named it? If you did, you should have said so sooner. What's it called? You wouldn't tell me all this time, and there I was, spending all that time helping you come up with names. What a waste of my imagination and smarts." After a brief silence, Lan Wangji said, "Wang Xian." "Huh?" "The name of the song is Wang Xian." Lan Wangji repeated. Wei Wuxian's eyes widened. Then he burst out laughing, hugging his belly. "No wonder you refused to tell me. It's because you sneakily titled it that. Your intentions were clear. Good going, Lan Zhan. When did you come up with that?" Lan Wangji seemed to have predicted this would be Wei Wuxian's reaction. He shook his head slightly as he watched him swaying forward and backward on Little Apple's back. He appeared resigned, but there was a subtle upward curve to his lips and an obscure look rippling in his eyes. He reached out and set a hand on Wei Wuxian's waist to prevent him from tumbling off the donkey's back. When he'd finally had his fill of laughter, Wei Wuxian said seriously, "Wang Xian is very good. Excellent. I like it. Yes, that's what it should be called." "I like it too," Lan Wangji replied stoically. "It sounds very elegant and righteous, very suited to the Lan clan of Gusu," Wei Wuxian said. "I think it can go straight into your family score collection, and will demand every Lan disciple learn it. If they ask you, 'Han Wangjun, how should the title be interpreted?' you can tell them how the song came to be." Seeing that he'd started spewing nonsense again, Lan Wangji gathered Little Apple's tether and carefully gripped the rope as they continued onward. Wei Wuxian continued to talk. "So where are we going next? I haven't had Emperor's Smile in a long time. How about we go back to Gusu and make a trip to Sai Town?" "Okay," Lan Wangji replied. "It's been so long. The waterborne abyss must be cleaned out by now, right? If your uncle manages to work up the tolerance to meet me, we can hide my liquor jugs in your room. If he refuses to grant me an audience, we can go somewhere else. It sounds like Shizhui and the boys in Wen Ning are doing well on night hunts." Lan Wangji said. "But apparently there's a new edition of the Lan Clan of Gusu's precepts? Seriously, is there even room left to write anything else on the wall of discipline near the front gates of your place?" A fresh breeze blew past, and their robes rippled with it like spring water. Facing the wind, Wei Wuxian watched Lan Wangji's back as they went. He squinted his eyes, crossed his legs, and was astonished to find he could actually maintain his balance on Little Apple's back in such a quaint position. It was such a boring, minor thing, but he was as eager to share it with Lan Wangji as if he'd discovered something new and interesting. Ooh, that's real right there. That's some real love bullshit right there. "Lan Zhan," he called, "look at me. Quick, look at me." Wei Wuxian was calling to him with a smile on his lips, just as he always had. Lan Wangji looked at him. And forever after, his eyes could never move away from him again. The end. Fuck. You know what's really stupid and naive of me? I knew we were going to finish the main story today. Did I realize that that meant that I would finally get to read the last line? Was I prepared for that at all? No. Oh. Art. I'm gonna have to, obviously I can't do it now because you don't just want to sit here and watch me just like think. But it's really interesting how the show kind of cut together their ending versus how the book actually ends. And from what I can remember, it makes sense from an adaptation perspective. Because the show did a really great job at tying up the ends that it was going to tie up. Sorry, you literally don't want to sit here and watch me think. No, that was a really, yeah, I'll have to fully fathom that. And it was, most of it, off the top of my head, most of it was just shifting the order around a little bit. And I think off the top of my head, there were like a couple of things that they added in that I'm not mad at all. Like for example, like having them separate for a little while, essentially because, you know, Lan Wangji has to go put his brother back together again, and then they reconnect later, which culminates in like that fucking amazing moment. Yeah, so far the changes I can think of I really like, but I would have to actually like go through the ending scenes in both and kind of hash it out, because that's a challenge to bring home an ending like that in two very different mediums. And they both succeeded. Hot damn. So we are now on the first extra little side story, page technically 189. It's called The Family Banquet. There is one of these side stories that we're going to skip because I have been told that there is, yeah, I might as well say it, there's some non-con evidently in the second side story, and that's something that I'm more comfortable parsing through and figuring out like off camera, because I don't know, that's literally all I know. I know nothing about like context or anything like that, and with something that specifically sensitive, I would rather read through that on my own. So we are actually going to skip that part. But we wouldn't get to that today anyway. We're just going to get through, I believe we're going to get through this first side story. Yeah. because we have a whole other second half to get through. And this story is like 16 pages. So, yeah, we should be able to get through this no problem. No, wait, I think I just did that math wrong. Longer than that. We should be able to get to the end of this. So anyway, side story, or extra story, sure. Number 1, called Family Banquet. Wait for me, said Lan Wangji to Wei Wuxian. Why don't I go in with you after all? Wei Wuxian replied. Lan Wangji shook his head. His ire will only grow if you should come. Wei Wuxian thought about it and realized he was right. Every time Lan Qiren saw him, we get to, like, go home with them? No. Ooh, I'm seated. I am here. I am at attention. Let's go. Every time Lan Qiren saw him, the latter withered like a candle in the wind, as though on the verge of heart failure. Even his breathing would grow more labored than usual. The only compassionate thing to do would be to stay out of sight, out of mind. Lan Wangji looked at him like he wanted to say something further. All right, I know, said Wei Wuxian quickly. No hurried walking, no clamoring, no whatever, right? Relax, I'll be more careful than ever this time. I won't violate a single family precept on the wall of discipline. Or, I'll try anyway. It is fine, answered Lan Wangji reflexively, even if you were to break the rules. Wei Wuxian said, catching on at once. Lan Wangji seemed to realize how inappropriate what he had blurted out was. He turned his head away for a moment before glancing back. Nothing, he said sternly. What did you just say? Asked Wei Wuxian in feigned ignorance. Even if I were to break the rules, what? Lan Wangji knew he was just teasing him. Wait for me outside, he repeated with a stern look. Wei Wuxian waved him off. Fine, I'll wait. You're so mean. I'll go play with your bunnies. Your bunnies. Like he didn't what? And so Lan Wangji went alone to receive Lan Qiren's flying spittle, while Wei Wuxian was dragged by Little Apple into a mad dash across the cloud recesses. Little Apple had been particularly excited ever since they entered the cloud recesses, and was full of bullish energy. Wei Wuxian couldn't rein it in no matter how he tried, but was forcibly dragged over to a meadow of lush green grass. Over a hundred chubby snowballs quietly huddled there. Their pink noses twitched, and every so often their long pink-centered ears would twitch as well. With its head held high, Little Apple squeezed itself among them, and soon found a place to rest. Oh, is this where that one piece of art came from? There was that one great piece of art of Little Apple and the buns. Oh! Wei Wuxian crouched down and caught a rabbit. Were there this many of them last time I came? He wondered as he tickled its tummy. Is this one a male or a female? Oh, male. It was then that Wei Wuxian realized that he'd never actually paid attention to whether Little Apple was a Jack or a Jenny. He couldn't help but cast a glance at the donkey, but didn't have a chance to solve that particular mystery before a sudden movement made him turn to look. A petite young girl with a little basket stood there, hesitating about whether to approach. When she saw Wei Wuxian turn his head so abruptly to stare at her, she flushed bright red, clearly at a loss for what to do. She wore the Lan Clan of Gusu's uniform and had a plain white forehead ribbon without the rolling clouds properly fastened around her head. Oh, damn, they do exist. This was a female cultivator. A female cultivator of the Lan Clan of Gusu. The Lan Clan of Gusu was known for their rigid, conservative ways. Rules such as men and women are different, or men and women must not touch, were unquestioningly and unceasingly drilled into the ears of the disciples from the time they were young. The study halls and living quarters of male and female cultivators were all strictly separated. They were forbidden to take a single step across those boundaries and seldom left their own areas. Even night hunts were essentially divided by gender. Parties consisted of either all men or all women. Instances where men and women mingled were virtually non-existent. It was outrageously conservative. When Wei Wuxian had studied at the cloud recesses all those years ago, he'd never seen any girls. He'd been deeply suspicious of whether there even were girls in the cloud recesses. Every so often he'd think he heard the sound of female cultivators reciting their lessons and attempt to hunt for them to satisfy his curiosity. Every time he would be discovered immediately by a sharp-eyed and sharp-eared patrol, who would then call forth Lan Wangji. After experiencing this sequence enough times, Wei Wuxian lost interest and never ventured out in search of the ladies again. But now he had run right into a real live female cultivator here at the cloud recesses. A live female cultivator. Wei Wuxian instantly straightened, eyes gleaming. He was about to move toward her, but Little Apple beat him to it. Shoving itself to its feet, it practically knocked him out of the way as it rushed to the girl's side. Wei Wuxian was baffled. Little Apple pressed itself to the girl, then demurely delivered its donkey head and donkey ears under her hand of its own accord. Wei Wuxian was absolutely flummoxed. The girl looked flushed and a little stunned, and she stared at Wei Wuxian, tongue-tied. Wei Wuxian peered back at her, realizing she looked vaguely familiar. The memory came back all at once. Wasn't she the round-faced girl he had met briefly several times in passing? First on the road after he left the Mo estate, then later at Mount Defen? If I'm supposed to remember this girl, then she's a deep cut from this album, because I can't place her. He could immediately break the ice with playful banter with complete strangers, never mind a nice young lady he'd met several times before. He waved at her without hesitation. "It's you!" It seems he had left a strong impression, with or without makeup on his face. The girl dithered, twisting the basket in her hands. "It's me," she said at last in a small voice. Wei Wuxian tossed aside the rabbit, which was, as he determined, male, and took a couple steps toward the girl with his hands clasped behind him. Noticing the carrots and lettuce in her basket, he smiled. "Here to feed the rabbits?" The girl nodded. There wasn't much to do with Lan Wangji gone, so Wei Wuxian's interest was piqued. "You want some help?" The girl didn't know what to expect, finally. The girl didn't know what to do except, finally, just nod. Wei Wuxian took one of the carrots, and the two of them crouched among the rabbits. Little Apple stuck its head into the basket to rummage around. When it found no apples, it reluctantly settled for a carrot, mouthing it out of the basket and chomping it down. The carrots in the basket were very fresh. Wei Wuxian took a bite of one himself before placing it next to a rabbit's mouth. "Have you been the one feeding them this whole time?" he asked. "No," answered the girl. "I only started recently. When Heng Wanjun isn't around, he's the one who looks after them." "When Heng Wanjun is around?" "When he's not around, young Master Lan Shijui and his group do it. If they're not around either, then we help." "How does Lan Chan feed rabbits?" wondered Wei Wuxian. "How old was he when he started keeping them? Did he have a little basket, too?" He shooed away the ridiculously cute image in his head. "You're a disciple of the Lan clan now?" "Yes," answered the girl shyly. "The Lan clan is nice," Wei Wuxian said. "When did that happen?" The girl stroked a white furry rabbit. "Not long after the incident at Mount Defen." Just then they both heard the soft sound of boots on grass. Wei Wuxian turned his head. Sure enough, Lan Wangji was making his way toward them. Flustered, the girl quickly stood and bowed with the utmost respect. "Heng Wanjun." Lan Wangji nodded lightly in return. In contrast, Wei Wuxian remained sitting on the grass and watching him with a grin. The girl seemed awfully scared of Lan Wangji, which was perfectly normal. There wasn't a junior her age who wasn't scared of him. She lifted her skirt and ran off in a panic. "Miss! Little Mei!" Wei Wuxian called after her. "Your basket!" "Hey, Little Apple! Come back, Little Apple! Why are you running too?" "Why are you running too?" "Little Apple!" He could stop neither girl nor donkey. Wei Wuxian flicked the carrots left in the basket. "Lan Zhan, you scared her off," he said. If Lan Wangji had not wanted them to hear his footfalls, how could they have ever heard him coming? Wei Wuxian grinned cheekily and offered him a carrot. "Want a bite? You feed the rabbits, and I'll feed you." "On your feet," said Lan Wangji, looking down at him imperiously. Wei Wuxian tossed the carrot over his shoulder and extended his hand lazily. Pull me up. After a brief pause, Lan Wangji reached out to take his hand. To his surprise, however, Wei Wuxian threw his weight back and pulled him down instead. Where's the art of this? Why is there not just billions of art of this? They are now surrounded by buns? That's my interpretation of this. With their territory overtaken by some strange man, the bunnies behaved like they faced a great foe, running in frantic, aimless circles around the two people sprawled on the ground. The few that were particularly close with Lan Wangji actually stood up and clung to him, as if they were worried why their master would suddenly collapse. Lan Wangji gently shooed them away. Gently is the operative word. The seventh rule upon the wall of discipline at the cloud recesses, he recited methodically, do not disturb the female cultivators. You said it's fine if I break the rules, Wei Wuxian said. I did not, Lan Wangji said. Why are you like this? Just because you didn't finish your sentence, it didn't count? What happened to the Han Wanjun who always kept his word? Every day, Lan Wangji stated. Wei Wuxian stroked Lan Wangji's face. Did your Shifu yell at you earlier? He asked pityingly. Tell me all about it. Let Gaga comfort you. The change of subject was quite blatant, but Lan Wangji didn't call him out. No. Really, he didn't? Wei Wuxian asked. Then what did he say to you? Lan Wangji hugged him without batting an eyelid. Not much. To gather the whole clan can be a trial. A family banquet will be held tomorrow. A family banquet? Banquet? Echoed Wei Wuxian with a grin. Good, good. I'll be on my best behavior and won't let you down. He suddenly thought of Lan Xichen. What about your brother? There was a moment's silence. I will go see him later, said Lan Wangji. Ziwujun had been perpetually in seclusion of late. Lan Wangji undoubtedly needed to have a long heart-to-heart talk with him. Wei Wuxian put his arms around Lan Wangji and patted his back gently. Speaking of which, he said after a while, how come I didn't see all of a sudden his name, Sujui and the others when we got here? In the past, that group of juniors would have been at the main mountain entrance as they arrived, waiting to crowd around them in a flurry of chatter. At the mention of Sujui and the others, Lan Wangji's brow relaxed a little. I will take you to see them. When he brought Wei Wuxian to visit Lan Sujui, Lan Jingyi, and the others, the juniors could do little more than make the barest exclamations of delight. It wasn't that they didn't want to react more, just that they physically couldn't. A dozen of them were doing handstands under the eaves. All of them had shed their outer robes, stripped down to their snow-white light shirts as they stood with their heads down and feet up. Several pieces of white paper and inkstones lay on the ground before them, and they each struggled to commit dense black characters to the pages with their right hands while balancing on their left. As they couldn't let their forehead ribbons fall to the ground, they held the tail ends in their mouths as they sweated profusely, which also meant they couldn't speak. The so-called barest exclamations of delight were simply a series of bright-eyed mm-mm-mm. As he surveyed the bodies teetering on the verge of collapse, Wei Wuxian had to ask, Are the handstands necessary? They are being punished, Lan Wangji answered. I know they're being punished, said Wei Wuxian. I can see they're copying the Lan clan's family precepts. Heck, I can recite standard etiquette from memory myself for the same reason. What did they do to be punished? They did not return to the cloud recesses within the expected time, answered Lan Wangji coolly. Oh, said Wei Wuxian. They went on a night hunt with the ghost general at their side, Lan Wangji added. Ha, remarked Wei Wuxian. You guys sure have guts. It was their third offense, added Lan Wangji. Wei Wuxian stroked his chin. If that was the case, they couldn't blame Lan Qiren for punishing them like this. The men loathed wickedness in all forms. In fact, to be copying texts while doing handstands, they were getting off pretty light. He squatted in front of Lan Shijui. Shijui, why does your stack seem particularly thick? Am I hallucinating? No, Lan Shijui said. He led the exposition. He led the expedition, Lan Wangji explained. Wei Wuxian wanted to pat Lan Shijui's shoulder, but with the position the boy was in, there was nowhere for him to settle his hand. After a pause, he lowered his hand and patted him with an upward motion. I knew it, he said. Lan Wangji walked along the line of boys, sparing them a few glances as he checked their work. Your characters, he said to Lan Jingyi, the strokes are not straight. Yes, Heng Wenjun, answered Lan Jingyi in a muffled voice, forehead ribbon in his teeth and tears in his eyes. I'll recopy the sheet. Those who had not been singled out all heaved a sigh of relief. They'd passed mustard. The two of them left the long corridor. Wei Wuxian recalled all the hard times when he himself had been forced to copy texts for punishment, and his heart went out to his fellow penitents. It's already hard enough to maintain that position. Even I might not be able to write if you made me do it in a handstand. Heck, I can't even consistently write straight when I'm sitting down. Lan Wangji glanced at him. Indeed. Wei Wuxian knew Lan Wangji remembered those days too. He'd kept close watch on him while he copied texts. Was it like this when you had to copy texts for punishment as a child? I never had to, Lan Wangji said. That sounded about right. Ever since he was a child, Lan Wangji had been the role model for the juniors of the prominent clans. Every word he uttered and every action he took was incomparably precise and standard, like it had been measured with a ruler. So how could he err? And since he couldn't err, how could he be punished? Like the ultimate teacher's pet. And here I thought that was how you developed that terrifying arm strength of yours, Wei Wuxian said with a laugh. I was never punished, Lan Wangji said. But that was how I trained. Why would you do handstands if you weren't being punished? Wondered Wei Wuxian. It calms the mind, answered Lan Wangji, looking straight ahead. Wei Wuxian leaned in close to his ear. There was a lilt at the end of his words as he asked, Then I wonder what it is that can perturb the mind of our cold-as-ice Han Wangjun. Lan Wangji looked at him and said nothing. Pleased with himself, Wei Wuxian continued, Going by what you said, that's how you trained your arms since you were little. Does that mean you can do anything upside down? Seeing him with his eyes downcast, almost shy in his answer, Wei Wuxian couldn't help but run his mouth. Could you screw me upside down? Let us try, Lan Wangji said. Whoa! Wei Wuxian laughed aloud. Wait, what? Let us try it tonight, Lan Wangji elaborated. I don't know what to... Wei Wuxian was dumbfounded. I don't know what to say to that. When is all of a sudden... My brain's empty. That said, they did not immediately get the chance to try it that night. Oh, god damn it. Lan Wangji first needed to have a heart-to-heart with Lan Shichen, who had been in seclusion for a long time. Okay, fine. Understandable. I suppose. Wei Wuxian had developed a strange habit lately. He liked to sleep on Lan Wangji, whether stacked atop him or cuddled face down against his chest. Without his living mattress, he couldn't sleep. Instead, he brazenly rummaged around the tranquility room, turning up countless objects of interest. Lan Wangji had been proper and rigid in all he did, ever since he was a child. Calligraphy he had practiced, paintings he had paintings he had drawn, essays he had written. They were all neatly categorized and sorted by year. Wei Wuxian decided to look at the calligraphy sheets first, starting from when Lan Wangji was at his youngest. He chuckled with relish as he flipped through them. The sight of Lan Shiren's red cinnabar-inked annotations made him wince, but Wei Wuxian found only one piece of paper with an erroneously written character in the thousands of sheets he flipped through. After making that mistake, Lan Wangji had studiously copied the incorrect character 100 times on another piece of paper in the back. Seeing it nearly rendered Wei Wuxian speechless. Poor thing. He must have copied that word until he could barely recognize it anymore. He was about to continue looking through the aged, faintly yellowed papers when a dim light flickered to life in the darkness of the night outside the tranquility room. Though he did not hear footsteps, Wei Wuxian rolled with practiced familiarity onto Lan Wangji's bed and pulled the blanket from his feet to his head. By the time Lan Wangji gently pushed the door open and entered, the facade that greeted him was the sight of a man sleeping soundly. Lan Wangji was moving soundlessly to begin with, but seeing Wei Wuxian already asleep, he reined in his breathing as he slowly shut the doors. After a moment of silence, he approached the bed. Before he drew near, a blanket flew at his face and covered his upper body completely. Lan Wangji was struck speechless. Wei Wuxian jumped off the bed and wrapped his arms tightly around the still-covered Lan Wangji, then pushed him onto the bed. And shouts a word that I won't shout, but another word for non-con that Lan Wangji remained speechless. Wei Wuxian crassly groped and tugged on every inch of Lan Wangji's body, but Lan Wangji lay there in silence like a dead man and simply let him do as he pleased. After a while, Wei Wuxian lost interest. Hang Wanjun, won't you resist even a little bit? Where's the fun if you just lay there like that? These two would. They would have this fantasy. Why'd I forget the term for it? Did I forget that? I feel like that's something super basic. I don't know. A muffled voice came through the blanket. What would you most prefer I do? Wei Wuxian walked impatiently through the scenario step by step. When I hold you down, push back and don't let me pin you. Close your close your legs and struggle with all your might, and while you do so, scream for help at the top of your lungs. Like he would ever scream at the... It's fine. Clamor is prohibited in the cloud recesses, Lan Wangji stated. Then scream for help quietly, Wei Wuxian said. Also, when I tear off your clothes, do your very best to keep me at bay. Cover and protect your chest for dear life. Don't let me tear off anything. There was momentary silence from under the blanket. That sounds complicated, said Lan Wangji at last. That's complicated? Wei Wuxian blurted. Lan Wangji affirmed. Nothing for it then, Wei Wuxian said. Let's switch. You can rape me instead. He'd barely finished the sentence before the world was sent spinning and the blanket was sent flying. Lan Wangji had already pinned him to the bed, getting the sense that it wasn't so much complicated as it was the role Lan Wangji did not prefer to play in their scenario. Lan Wangji had been stuffed under the blanket for some time. His immaculately secured hair and forehead ribbons had been knocked askew, and a few tussled? Yeah. Woo. And a few tousled locks dangled free. His fair as jade cheeks were slightly flushed. Under the lamplight, he looked very much like a shy and timid beauty. Unfortunately, this beauty was unbelievably strong and had a grip like a vice, which squeezed Wei Wuxian until he begged for mercy. Hang Wanjun, a great man is magnanimous. Lan Wangji's gaze didn't waver, but the blazing light reflected in his eyes quivered almost imperceptibly. Wearing an indifferent expression, he loftily answered, Very well. Very well what? Asked Wei Wuxian. Handstand? I'm sensitive to that word. So we're going to replace that with non-con. Handstand, non-con. Hey, my clothes. It is as you said yourself, said Lan Wangji. With that, he planted himself between Wei Wuxian's legs and pressed against him. But though Wei Wuxian waited for a long time, he proceeded no further. What's wrong? Lan Wangji rose slightly. Why did you not resist? He asked. Wei Wuxian clamped down on his waist with his legs and ground slowly against him, refusing to let him leave. He grinned cheekily and sighed. What can I do? The moment you bear down on top of me, my legs can't help but spread on their own. He is the most delightful slut that I can't close them at all. Where would I find the strength to resist it? It might be tough for you, but it's tough on me, too. Hold on. Come. Here, let me show you something. He fished a piece of paper out of his robes. Lanjian, let me ask you something. How could you miswrite such a simple character? Were you really concentrating on your studies? Where was your head at that day? Now? We're going to talk about that now? I don't think calligraphy is on his mind so much. Lan Wangji cast a glance at the paper and said nothing, but the meaning in his gaze was all too obvious. The nerve of Wei Wuxian, the king of mistakes and omissions, who wrote in wild cursive when he copied texts and cut corners whenever he could, to criticize him for writing one character wrong. Wei Wuxian pretended he didn't understand that look. Look at the day, month, and year you wrote on this piece. Let's see, you would have been 15 or 16 then, right? 15 or 16 years old and still making a mistake like that. I thought this was from when he was, like, younger? Like 9? Not at this specific age? But when he considered the inscribed date a little more carefully, he realized that it fell within the 3 months he had spent studying in the cloud recesses. Wei Wuxian was beside himself with joy. Could it be that the young Lannergaga couldn't focus on his studies because he could think of nothing but me? He wheedled deliberately. Back when Wei Wuxian had been sentenced to copying texts... Oops, sorry, I think I bumped into the mic. Sentenced to copying texts in the library pavilion as punishment, he'd spent the whole day going buck wild, playing dead, harassing Lan Wangji in every imaginable way. He made such a fuss that Lan Wangji had not a moment of peace. It would have been impossible for him to not think about Wei Wuxian. Except they weren't the kind of thoughts Wei Wuxian was suggesting. The circumstances having been what they were, it was admirable that Lan Wangji had endured so much as he supervised him and come away with but a single error. Hey, why is it my fault again? Wei Wuxian lamented. Sure, I'm the one to blame. Your fault, Lan Wangji muttered. His breathing stuttered as he grabbed for the page that was such a blemish on his life. Wei Wuxian loved seeing him forced to the point of being flustered. Really? We had no idea. He shoved the paper down the front of his robes to hide it against his skin. Come and get it if you think you can. Lan Wangji reached his hand down without hesitation, and never bothered to take it out. Guess you can, Wei Wuxian exclaimed. They went on to spend more than half the evening messing around, and it was only much later in the night that they finally managed to have a proper conversation. Wei Wuxian was sprawled atop Lan Wangji's body, his face buried in the crook of his neck, where the sandalwood scent grew all the more ambrosial. He felt languid from head to toe, his eyes squinted into crescents of contentment. How's your brother? He asked. Wrapping his arms around Wei Wuxian's bare back, Lan Wangji stroked along it over and over again. After a moment of silence, he answered, Not well. Both of them were damp with sweat. Lan Wangji's touch stirred up an itch that started in Wei Wuxian's skin and migrated to the very depths of his heart. Woof! Made somewhat uncomfortable by the sensation, he twisted and took Lan Wangji even deeper inside him. I was not aware we were all right. In my seclusion years ago, Shengjiang offered me an ear, Lan Wangji said in a low voice. and now their positions had been reversed. As for what Lan Wangji did during his years in seclusion, Wei Wuxian no longer had to ask. He dropped a kiss on Lan Wangji's jade-white earlobe and drew the blanket up over them both. Even so, Lan Wangji woke up promptly at Mao time the next morning. Living together these past few months, Lan Wangji had dedicated himself to correcting Wei Wuxian's daily habits. These efforts were invariably in vain. He was already tidily dressed when a disciple brought warm water for bathing, and he pried a stark naked Wei Wuxian from under the thin blanket and carried him to the bathtub. Wei Wuxian, however, could stay asleep even as he soaked in the water. As Lan Wangji nudged him gently, Wei Wuxian grabbed his hand, planted a few kisses upon its back and the center of its palm, nuzzled his cheek against it, and continued to doze. When the prodding began to annoy him, he grunted twice. With his eyes still closed, he pulled Lan Wangji down in order to cup his face and drop a few kisses there. "Stop it, be a good boy," he mumbled. "Please, I'll get up in a bit, okay?" Then he yawned, leaned over the side of the bathtub, and went back to sleep. Although he knew Wei Wuxian would probably just roll over and remain asleep even if the building was on fire, Lan Wangji still insisted on trying to wake him up every morning at Mao time, and he received no less than 60 haphazard kisses in the process, all of which he accepted without batting an eye. Lan Wangji brought breakfast back to the tranquility room and set it on the desk that had once held only brushes, papers, ink sticks, and ink slabs. Then he fished a still half-asleep Wei Wuxian from the wooden tub, wiped him clean, dressed him, and fastened his sash. Only after that did Lan Wangji take a book from the bookcase, flip to the page bookmarked by a dried flower, and then settle by the desk to read it slowly. Sure enough, Wei Wuxian sat up straight toward the end of C or she? Crap. C time? As punctual as ever. He felt his way off the bed like a sleepwalker. Groping around for Lan Wangji before all else, he dragged him into his arms for a couple of caresses, then pinched his thigh out of habit. It was only after a quick wash that he was finally a little more awake. He felt his way over to the desk and chomped down on an apple, finishing it in a few bites. Seeing the meal box packed to the brim with food, the corner of Wei Wuxian's mouth twitched. "Isn't there a family banquet today? Is it okay to eat so much ahead of time?" Lan Wangji calmly straightened his hair and forehead ribbons, which Wei Wuxian had knocked askew earlier. "You must fill your stomach first." Wei Wuxian had had the pleasure of sampling the food of the cloud recesses back in the day. Simple and bland, with vegetable dishes at the forefront, it was a never-ending expanse of green. Tree bark, grass roots, and various medicinal herbs, every dish was overwhelmingly bitter, with a bizarrely sweet aftertaste. If not for that, Wei Wuxian would never have toyed with the idea of roasting those two rabbits back in their school days. A Lan family banquet was unlikely to be filling or satisfying. Which is ironic, considering that Lan Wangji can... He knew the Lan clan of Gusu attached great importance to these gatherings. Whether or not they allowed him to attend the family banquet would functionally indicate whether they acknowledged his status as Lan Wangji's cultivation partner. Lan Wangji must have pestered Lan Qiren for a long time, fighting for his right to attend. Wei Wuxian sighed heavily and put on a smile. "Don't worry, I'll be on my best behavior and won't disgrace you." While it might have been called a family banquet, the Cloud Recesses version of such an event was completely different from anything Wei Wuxian had once known. For the Jang clan of Yanmeng's family banquets, over a dozen large square tables would be set up in Lotus Pier's open-air training grounds. Men and women, young and old, everyone sat together as they pleased, formality falling by the wayside. They would move the kitchen outside, lining up a row of pots and stoves. The flames would light up the sky, and the aroma of food would permeate the air. Anything they wanted to eat, they would go over and get themselves, and if there wasn't enough food, more would be cooked on the spot. While he had never attended the family banquets of the Jin clan of Lanling, the Jins had never demurred at sharing the details of their mind-boggling extravagance. Sword dances by renowned experts to liven things up, ornamental topiaries and jade pools filled with liquor, 50 kilometers of red brocade paving the ground, and more. In comparison, the family banquet of the cloud recesses was neither boisterous nor extravagant. The education and upbringing of the land clan of Gusu had always been terrifyingly strict, with countless rules. Food is taken in silence, rest is taken in silence, and so on. Even though the banquet had yet to start, no one in attendance said a word. Other than the hushed greetings and bows those who entered the hall gave their elders, almost no one spoke, let alone joked or laughed. The same white clothes, the same white cloud-patterned ribbons, the same stiff and solemn expressions. It was as if they had all been cast from the same mold. Seeing the entire hall decked out in enough white for a full memorial procession, Wei Wuxian pretended not to notice the looks of astonishment and hostility from the other attendees as he grumbled inwardly, "Is this a family banquet? Why is it even more lifeless than a funeral?" At that moment, Lan Xichen and Lan Qiren entered the banquet hall. Lan Wangji, who had been sitting quietly beside Wei Wuxian, finally moved as he saw them arrive. Because Lan Qiren had a conniption every time he saw Wei Wuxian, he simply chose not to acknowledge his presence, keeping his eyes trained forward instead. Lan Xichen was as pleasant as ever, with a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his lips. Though the very sight of him made one feel warm and at ease, like basking in a spring breeze, Wei Wuxian couldn't help but wonder if seclusion had taken its toll. Zewujun seemed a lot thinner than before. After the head of the family took his seat, Lan Xichen spoke a few brief, polite words before the banquet commenced. The first course served was soup. Taking soup before a meal was traditional in the Lan clan of Gusu. The bowl was a simple black lacquered cup that fit in the palm and was smooth to the touch. Wei Wuxian opened the tiny, exquisite lid and peeked inside. Sure enough, it was yet another heaping pile of bark, grass roots, and green and yellow leaves. Though just looking at it made his eyebrows twitch, he scooped a spoonful into his mouth. He had mentally prepared himself beforehand and still couldn't help but close his eyes and clutch his forehead. It was a long time before he finally recovered from that massive shock to his senses and was able to lever himself up onto his elbows, though with some difficulty. If the Lan clan's ancestor was a monk, he must have been an ascetic monk. He longed for a Jiang family banquet, for the big pot brimming with lotus root and pork rib soup that was served on Lotus Pier's training grounds. The aroma of meat and lotus root would waft for 5 kilometers around, luring in the nearby children, who would lean over the courtyard wall to peek in, salivating. When they returned home, they would cry and yell that they were going to join the Jiang clan of Yanmeng as disciples. By comparison, Wei Wuxian didn't know who to pity more, himself, with a mouthful of bittersweetness, or Lan Wangji, who'd grown up eating this. The rest of the Lan family had finished their medicinal soup without so much as batting an eye, their expressions and movements elegant, natural, and composed. Wei Wuxian couldn't help but feel sheepish to be the only one with so much left in his bowl. To make matters worse, he remembered there being some directives pertaining to mealtime etiquette among the 4,000 family precepts. Actually, no, who knew how many thousands more had been added by now? Picky eating is forbidden. Leaving food uneaten is forbidden. Eating more than 3 bowls of rice is forbidden, and so on. He found these family rules particularly mind-boggling, but he didn't want to be spurned by Lan Qiren again that quickly. But just as Wei Wuxian was about to steel himself and down the odd soup in one gulp, he realized that the bowl in front of him was empty. Baffled, he picked up the exquisite little lacquered cup. "I clearly only drank a mouthful. Is there a leak in this thing?" However, the dining table was spotless and shiny, no puddle of broth in sight. Wei Wuxian cast a sidelong glance at Lan Wangji just as he calmly finished the last mouthful of his own medicinal soup. Eyes lowered, he put the lid back on the bowl and patted the corner of his lips with a snowy white square of a napkin. Wei Wuxian distinctly remembered that Lan Wangji had finished his cup much earlier. Furthermore, Lan Wangji's table seemed a lot closer than it had been before the banquet started, as if it had been shifted toward Wei Wuxian's on the sly. Stunned, Wei Wuxian arched an eyebrow. "Hang Wanjun, you sure move fast, huh?" he mouthed to Lan Wangji. Lan Wangji set down the napkin and glanced at Wei Wuxian before calmly shifting his gaze forward once more. The more serious he looked, the harder it was for Wei Wuxian to suppress the growing urge to make mischief, and this is why they're perfect for each other. Forever and ever, amen. He tapped his finger gently on the small, black lacquered cup, making a sound only the two of them could hear. On hearing it, Lan Wangji's eyes imperceptibly shifted a few centimeters toward him. Wei Wuxian knew Lan Wangji would not miss a single movement he made, no matter how polite his line of sight might seem to onlookers. He raised the cup as though he was about to drink from it, then turned it in his hand and stopped at the spot from which Lan Wangji had just drunk. He then covered the edge of the cup with his lips. The reaction was as he had anticipated. Although Lan Wangji's hands remained properly placed on his legs, his fingers curled slightly beneath his white sleeves. Wei Wuxian felt elated, like he was floating. Suddenly at ease, he was about to lean instinctively toward Lan Wangji when a stern cough rang out from Lan Qiren's direction. He quickly straightened up and resumed his upright posture. After the soup, they waited in silence for a while before the main course was formally served. Every table received 3 side dishes, each on a tiny plate. If the food was not green, it was white, just like the meals served during Wei Wuxian's time studying here. Even all these years later, there was no change at all, save for an intensified bitterness. Partly because of regional differences, and partly because of his own nature, Wei Wuxian's taste tended toward the stronger side. He adored spicy food and was displeased by a lack of meat. Faced with such simple fare, he really had no appetite. He powered through everything in a few bites, not registering what he ate at all. Lan Qiren swept his gaze over from time to time, ready to pin him with a ferocious glare. He was the same as he had been during lessons back in the day, always ready to single Wei Wuxian out by name and tell him to get lost. However, Wei Wuxian was so uncharacteristically well behaved that there was nothing he could do but let the matter drop. After finishing the tasteless meal, the servants removed the dishware and tables. As was standard procedure, Lan Qiren began to review recent clan matters aloud, but after listening to him utter just a few sentences, Wei Wuxian thought he seemed distracted. Lan Qiren got the locations of 2 night hunts wrong without even realizing it and didn't catch his mistake. It caused Lan Qiren to look askance at him and huff, his goatee bristling. He listened for some more time, then was finally compelled to cut him off. With that, the family banquet was hastily concluded without further mishaps. A depressing beginning, a depressing middle, and a depressing end. Wei Wuxian had been forced to bear the gloom for nearly 2 hours. Not only was there no good food, there hadn't even been any entertainment to liven things up. He held himself in check until it felt like half a year's worth of accrued fleas were crawling up and down his back. After the banquet ended, Lan Qiren sternly called Lan Qiren and Lan Wangji away. Another lecture, from the looks of it. There was no one around whom he could act out with, so Wei Wuxian wandered until he found a gaggle of juniors walking together in 2s and 3s. He was about to call out to them, grab them, and head out to have some fun, but when Lan Shijui, Lan Jingyi, and the others saw him, their expressions changed drastically, and they turned to leave. Wei Wuxian understood. He drifted to a part of the woods that was more secluded and waited. Eventually, the juniors furtively emerged. Wei Chanbei, Lan Jingyi said, "We weren't ignoring you on purpose, but Shan Sheng said that anyone who speaks to you will have to copy the Lan Clan's family precepts from beginning to end." Shan Sheng was the standard honorific that all juniors and disciples of the Lan Clan of Gusu used for Lan Qiren, so any mention of Shan Sheng could only mean him. "It's fine," said Wei Wuxian, a little smug. "I already knew that. It's not the first time your Shan Sheng has tried to guard against fires, burglars, and Wei Wuxian, but have you ever seen him succeed? He probably feels like his prize cabbage has been dug up by a pig, so it's only natural he'd be even more hot-tempered than usual." Lan Jingyi was speechless. Lan Shijui could only chuckle weakly. By the way, I heard you guys were being punished because you went on night hunts with Wen Ning, said Wei Wuxian, once he was done laughing. He turned to Lan Shizhui and asked, "How is he now?" "He's probably hiding in some corner of the mountain, waiting for us to look for him on our next night hunt," Lan Shizhui answered. After thinking for a moment, he added worriedly, "But Sect Leader Jiang still seemed very angry when we parted ways. I hope he didn't make things hard for him." "Huh? Jing Chang? How did you run into him during a night hunt?" Wei Wuxian asked. "We invited Jing Gongji to go with us last time, so," Lan Shizhui explained. Wei Wuxian immediately understood. He didn't need to guess what had happened. Wen Ning would naturally not remain idle when Lan Shizhui led the others on night hunts, but would follow them in secret to protect them and lend a helping hand if they encountered danger. Jiang Cheng also habitually followed Jinling in secret, for fear that something might happen to him. Thus they had bumped into each other during said critical period when their aid was required. After some probing, Wei Wuxian discovered this was indeed what had happened. Caught between laughter and tears, he paused, then asked, "How are Sect Leader Jiang and Jinling doing lately?" After Jing Guangyao's death, the only legitimate heir left to lead the Jing clan of Lanling was Jinling. However, there were many elders from the extended branches of the family eyeing the position from the sidelines, ready to seize any opportunity that arose. On the outside, the Jing clan of Lanling was derided and spurned by the other clans. On the inside, it was a nest of deceit and ulterior motives. Jinling was only a teenager. How could he be expected to keep things under control? In the end, it was only because Jiang Cheng descended on Golden Carp Tower with Zidian in hand that Jinling was able to temporarily secure his seat at the head of the family. As to whether that would change in the future, no one could say for sure. Lan Jingyi pouted. "They seem to be doing well. Sect Leader Jiang is the same as ever, likes to go around cracking the whip. The young mistress's temper has gotten better. He used to talk back 3 times for each one of his Juju's reprimands, and now he manages to do it 10 times. "Jingyi, how can you call him that behind his back?" chided Lan Shizhui. "I call him that to his face, too," said Lan Jingyi defensively. Wei Wuxian heaved a small breath of relief on hearing this. He knew deep down that that wasn't actually what he wanted to ask, but there was really nothing more to say. Jiang Cheng and Jinling sounded like they were both doing all right. He stood up and patted the hem of his robes. "All good then. They can keep that up. You guys can go back to playing around. I've got something else to do." "You never do anything in the cloud recesses," Lan Jingyi said disdainfully. "So what do you need to attend to?" Without even looking back, Wei Wuxian answered, "Gnawing on cabbage." It was rare for him to wake this early, so when he returned to the tranquility room, he covered himself with a blanket and passed out. As a result of his messed up sleep schedule, it was already dusk by the time he woke. He'd missed dinner, and there was nothing left for him to eat. Wei Wuxian did not feel hungry regardless, so he went back to rummaging through the chests and cupboards in search of Lan Wangji's past calligraphy and manuscripts as he waited. However, though he waited until nightfall, there was still no sign of his big cabbage. By then, he had finally noticed his empty stomach, but by his estimation, the cloud recess's curfew had already gone into effect. According to the family rules, unauthorized people were not permitted to wander the premises at night, much less climb over the wall and go outside. Back in the day, Wei Wuxian would not have cared what he was not allowed or prohibited to do. He would eat when hungry, sleep when sleepy, tease when bored, and flee when he stirred up trouble. However, his situation was different now. If he did not abide by the rules, the blame would fall squarely on Lan Wangji. No matter how hungry or bored he was, he could only heave a long sigh and endure it. Suddenly, a soft noise echoed from outside the tranquility room, and the door very gently slid open a sliver. Lan Wangji had returned. Wei Wuxian lay on the ground and played dead. Very quietly, Lan Wangji walked over to the desk and set something on it, not speaking a word. Wei Wuxian would have continued to play dead, but then Lan Wangji opened something, and a compelling, spicy aroma instantly overpowered the scent of sandalwood that permeated the air in the tranquility room. Oh, my baby was good and he about to be rewarded. Wei Wuxian clambered up from the ground with all haste. Urgaga, I'll be your slave for life. Bro, you already committed to doing that. Without so much a ripple of change in his expression, Lan Wangji removed the dishes one by one from the meal box and placed them on the study desk. Wei Wuxian drifted over to him and saw the expanse of fiery red on 5 or 6 snowy white plates, a sight which delighted him. His eyes gleamed hungrily. Heng Wanjun, you really are much too kind and considerate, going out of your way to bring me food. From now on, just shout for me when you have anything that needs doing. Lan Wangji produced a pair of ivory white chopsticks and set them horizontally across the bowl. Food is taken in silence, he said mildly. You also said that rest is taken in silence, Wei Wuxian said. So why don't you stop me when I talk so much and scream so loudly every night? Yeah, like what is with that? It's just a simple question. These are just questions, these are just thoughts, these are just, inquiries. Lan Wangji glanced at him. Okay, I'll shut up, said Wei Wuxian. The two of us are already like this, and yet you're still so thin-skinned, getting all embarrassed at the tiniest things. That's what I like about you. Did you bring these from the Hunan Cuisine restaurant in Sai Town? Lan Wangji neither confirmed nor denied this, so Wei Wuxian took it as tacit acknowledgement. He sat by the study desk. I wonder if that Hunan Cuisine restaurant is still open, he said. We always used to eat there in the past. If I had to survive solely on your family's food, I wouldn't have lasted those few months. I mean, look at this. This is what I call a family banquet. We? Lan Wangji echoed. Zheng Cheng and I, replied Wei Wuxian. Occasionally Ni Huasang and the others, too. Casting a sidelong glance at Lan Wangji, he laughed. Why are you looking at me like that? Heng Wanjun, don't forget that I invited you to come with us to that restaurant. Invited you with enthusiasm and effort, even. You were the one who refused to go. I'd say a single word to you and you'd glare at me. Every time, your replies would start and end with no, and then you'd brush me off entirely. I still haven't settled the score with you, and yet you're the one sulking right now. Speaking of which... He nuzzled up to Lan Wangji. I was worried about breaking the rules. That's why I held back from sneaking out. Instead, I behaved myself and waited for you here in our room. Who would have thought you'd break the rules on your own and sneak out to get me food? If your Shufu finds out about your misbehavior, those heart problems of his are gonna act up again. Lan Wangji lowered his head and wrapped his arms around Wei Wuxian's waist. He seemed quiet and still, but Wei Wuxian could feel his fingers subtly caressing his waist. His fingers were so hot that the heat penetrated his clothes to his skin. Wei Wuxian could feel their touch clearly and distinctly. He hugged him back and whispered, Heng Wanjun, I drank your family's medicinal soup, and now my whole mouth tastes bitter. I can't eat anything like this. What should I do? A single mouthful, Lan Wangji said. Yes, I only drank a mouthful, Wei Wuxian said. I don't know who concocted that stuff, but it had a seriously strong aftertaste. The bitterness slid right from the tip of my tongue down to the back of my throat. Quick, tell me, what should I do? It must be neutralized at once, said Lan Wangji, after a moment of silence. Wei Wuxian humbly asked for advice on the process. How should I neutralize it? Lan Wangji raised his head. A faint medicinal scent passed between their lips and teeth. The slight bitterness drew out this kiss, making it lingeringly long. Heng Wanjun, I just remembered that you drank 2 bowls of that soup, murmured Wei Wuxian when they finally parted. The bitterness on your tongue must be much stronger than mine. Lan Wangji said. But you still taste pretty sweet, Wei Wuxian said. How strange. Have your meal first, said Lan Wangji. After a pause, he added, We will do things when you're done eating. I mean, okay. I'll have the cabbage first, said Wei Wuxian. Lan Wangji frowned ever so slightly, as if puzzled why Wei Wuxian had suddenly mentioned cabbage. Wei Wuxian laughed out loud as he wrapped his arms around Lan Wangji's neck. When all was said and done, a so-called family banquet was still best held behind closed doors. that is where we're stopping for today. That should come in right about the... Look at that. Dead-ass perfect timing today. Ooh, we love a miracle. All right, so we are on, actually, since we are skipping the incense burner, and it's like, I realized that, you know, Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji have their certain type of play that they have. I was informed, however, that it wasn't that. Or at least that's how I understood the message, was that it wasn't like that. It was something else, some scenario of like if like Wang Ji like seriously, I don't know. All I know is that from the context, it sounded like something that I may not even want to read, period, but if I was going to give a shot to read and see what it was about, I would do that off camera. Unless I'm like thoroughly corrected sometime between now and tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, when I read some more, in which case we'll read this. But so technically, what I mean is, technically, we're on page 217, but we will most likely be skipping to the third side story, the third extra story, which is on page 267. That was the whole point of that. So, we are done for today. I love that we got just little glimpses of, like, Shi-Chen, kind of how he's doing, and Jing Chung, really from afar, kind of how he's doing. Wenning, what Wenning is currently up to, and how he's passing his time, Shijui, and all that stuff. It was a nice little post-canon. It was really, yeah, it felt very much like an epilogue. That's a nice little extra moment that you really don't need, but there were certainly some things that I was super curious about as to how they would be handled in canon, if at all, if it was just something that we purely used as a jumping off point in fandom. So that was really nice to find. That was a nice little story. I'm excited about the other ones too. I didn't know that there were that she had written extra stuff for them, and so I'm very, very happy that she has. And we will, let's see, especially since we will most likely wind up skipping to page 267. It'll be our next session for this week, and then probably next week that it'll take for us to finish this, which is a little bit behind schedule. So things are being shifted around a wee bit. Like there might have to be a little bit of a break between this volume 5 and then starting Heaven Official's Blessing volume 4. It kind of depends, because I've got like the two biggest things that are happening on the channel this year are Good Omens and Heartstopper, and they happen within 7 days of each other. So I've got a huge fucking like 2-week chunk coming up at the end of July that I need time to rest and chill and prepare for. So July may be a little bit light of a month, meaning there needs to be a little bit of a break, but obviously, I mean, I'm not going nowhere with Heaven Official's Blessing. That is absolutely happening as soon as possible. I just have to do it as soon as possible with a little bit of an asterisk in there and like other things to consider. But it will entirely fucking happen as soon as realistically possible. How about that? I hope you had a good time. That was a wonderful, beautiful, cute, fluffy little moments of emotion time. That was amazing. Everything I could have fucking asked for. I hate MXTX. And we will keep going next time. And get to the end of all the side stories and then just be done. And then I'm going to have to grieve, but we'll get there. It'll be okay. So I will see you again very, very soon on Friday with more Modazuche. And in the meantime, please remember to take care of yourself.